Okay, let's talk about something every single coder has gone through, but maybe hasn't really thought about. The actual damage you do when you try to code on zero sleep. It's a bigger deal than you think.
You know this scene, right? I mean, we've all been there. You're staring at the screen, totally fueled by caffeine and just pure willpower. You run the code, it doesn't crash, and you think, yes, I did it. You commit, you push, you slam the laptop shut. But yeah, that is not where the story ends.
See, this whole late-night coding marathon, it isn't some badge of honor. It's actually a trap, and it's one that catches everybody, even the best developers. And it leads to code that's not just messy, but often it's just plain broken.
And then the next morning happens. You open your laptop, you're feeling a little groggy, and you see the feedback on your pull request. In the harsh light of day, that genius fix from 2 a.m. looks, well, not so genius anymore. It's that sinking feeling we all know way too well.
So what is really going on here? Because it's not just about a few typos. The very structure, the logic of your code, it all starts to fall apart in these predictable and honestly kind of funny ways when your brain is just running on empty.
The symptoms are like a checklist of programming sins. Your variable names become totally useless. I'm talking temp2, or my personal favorite, final. You completely forget about edge cases. Your logic flows in a way that feels right but is secretly breaking everything. Your comments? Either they don't exist or they're so cryptic they might as well be in another language. And of course, the commit messages. ASDF, fix, or it works, I think. Come on, does that sound familiar?
Now here's what's so fascinating about all this. The root cause isn't about you lacking talent or dedication. It has nothing to do with willpower. This is all about biology. Let's get into what's actually happening inside your head.
You're not writing bad code because you're lazy. Nope. You're writing it because your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that handles all the heavy lifting like decision-making and logical reasoning, is basically offline. It's just running on fumes. And here is the really, really dangerous part. It's a psychological thing called illusory competence. Being exhausted actually quiets that little voice of doubt in your head, the one that tells you, hey, maybe you should double-check that. You mistake that silence for confidence, even while your actual ability is tanking. So you feel like a genius, but you're coding like a total beginner.
So this mental fog has a few specific consequences. First, your working memory just shrinks. You can't hold as many variables or function calls in your head at the same time. You completely lose the thread of how the code you just wrote connects to the part you wrote an hour ago, and that's where all the logical gaps come from. Second, your pattern recognition gets super lazy. Your brain literally starts to autocomplete what it expects to see, not what's actually on the screen. This is exactly why you can stare at a super obvious off-by-one error for an hour at 3 a.m. and just not see it. And finally, your ability to assess risk, it just evaporates. You stop asking all those critical what-if questions. What if the input is null? What if this array is empty? What if the user types in a negative number? All that vital defensive coding just goes right out the window.
Okay, so if our brains are basically hardwired to fail when we're tired, how do experienced developers manage to avoid this trap? Well, the answer isn't about pushing harder. It's all about building smarter habits.
You can see the difference so clearly here. When the code works on the first try, the tired junior dev just commits it straight away. The experienced dev, they write 3 more tests for edge cases. When their brain feels foggy, one person pushes through while the other stops and goes to sleep. And that's the whole secret. Senior developers know that the single most productive thing they can do when they're exhausted is to stop coding.
This all brings us to a really important question. If you know your own brain is going to betray you when you're tired, what kind of guardrails can be put in place to stop yourself from making a huge mess?
Here is a simple but brilliant tool, a pre-commit checklist. Seriously, before you even think about typing git commit, ask yourself these 4 questions. Can I explain this logic out loud and have it make sense? Does this function do just one thing well? Did I test at least one weird input? And would I be embarrassed if a future employer saw this commit message? If the answer to any of those is no, just step away from the keyboard.
And for those really impossible bugs, you gotta try the sleep on it technique. Instead of just banging your head against the keyboard, write a really clear comment explaining exactly what the problem is. Then, and this is the important part, close the laptop. Do not commit, just go to sleep. Your brain will often keep working on the problem in the background, and when you reread that comment in the morning, the solution can feel like magic. It's suddenly so obvious. All right, let's zoom out a bit. Because this isn't just about passing a class or fixing one little bug. These habits, they have real long-term consequences for your professional reputation and your entire career.
Here's why this matters so much in the long run. Your commit history on platforms like GitHub is, for all intents and purposes, a part of your professional resume. When you apply for internships, for jobs, people are going to look at it. It tells a story about how you work, how you think, and how you communicate.
And the difference it makes is just stark. On one side, you've got the 2 a.m. commits, fix, as def, final. On the other, you have professional commits that clearly state the problem and the solution. Now, both coders might have the exact same level of technical skill, but they create two completely different professional impressions. One looks chaotic and unreliable, the other looks methodical and professional.
And this really gets to the heart of the matter. We have to challenge this myth in tech culture that somehow suffering equals productivity. Pulling an all-nighter to write buggy, confusing code, that is not dedication. It's just inefficient. Real productivity is about working smart when your brain is actually sharp, not just working longer.
So, I'll just leave you with this one question. The next time you're about to push a commit at 2 in the morning, just pause for a second and ask yourself, is this the story I want my code to tell about my work, my process, and my professionalism? Because the code you'd write after a good night's sleep is almost always going to be better. Thanks for tuning in.